Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to Zoomcast 2. This is our second showing about the Universal Language Room with Jason Caplan. We have wonderful friends today, and I want everybody to give a quick hello. So Vaneet, thank you for joining us. Say hi.
Hi, thank
And
you.
we have Jan.
Hi.
And of course, Jason Caplan, who has brought all of these wonderful people together for us. So I wanted to welcome everybody. Jason, let's go ahead and start with you first. I want you to just share a little bit about how you met Jan and Vaneet. And then after we hear from them also, I then want you to share a little bit about your religion of Judaism, Jason. So start with how you guys met first.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shoshana. So I came to Memphis about 2016, and a really short introduction is that I had wonderful relations with the Sikh and Bahai community in New York City. I was hoping to replicate that here and continue that, because that's a big part of my spiritual life, having those connections to that, both of those communities. So I emailed the Bahai community and met Jan, who invited me to the Bahai Gathering Center on Robin Hood Lane, and came to several events which were really exciting, one of which was a Universal Language Room in conjunction with a Baha'i holiday, Ayamiha, and it was really a wonderful, very unique experience that I think of often. And then as typical of my relationship with the Sikh community, I just drove over, which I used to do in New York. I just would show up and they would say, so what exactly would you like to do here? And also in the Mid-South Gurudwara here, I showed up, I sat for services in Langar, the open kitchen. And I've been doing that for a couple years. And I said, I'd like to start introducing the Sikh community to the broader Jewish community. Was there someone I could speak to? And they said, please speak to Vaneet. So we've had a wonderful friendship from that moment on, getting coffee, going on TV together, and talking about Sikhism and Judaism. So that's a really short introduction on my first connection with both Jan and Vaneet.
Love it. Super welcoming and positive, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Both communities
Good.
very much so.
Good. Okay, so we'll come back to you in a minute to share a little bit about Judaism with us, but I want to hit back to Vaneet and Jan, and I want you guys each to share just a little bit. I mean, I know we could talk about your beautiful faiths forever, and they're wonderful. So just give us like a little overview of your religions and who founded them, and maybe talk about its uniqueness and core principles and values and things like that. Vaneet, you want to get us started?
Oh, thanks, Shoshana. So Sikhism is world's fifth largest religion. It's structured religion, founded about 500 years ago. And it was founded in South Asia and in 1469 by Guru Nanak. Guru is, in a strict sense, it's a word used for enlightener or master. So Guru Nanak, Nanak was the name. Sikhism is a monotheistic religion. We believe in one God, and our core values are equality, community service, serving, towards others, needful, and meditation, meditate in the name of God. So 3 pillars of Sikhism: meditate in the name of God, earn a truthful living, and share whatever you are earning with the less fortunate. So those are the 3 basic principles. And I'll say there are about 25 million Sikhs worldwide. 22 million of those live in India. Sikhism's origin goes back to India. And there are about 500,000 Sikhs in United States. So that's kind of a very brief gist of our religion. Again, I'll reiterate that we believe in oneness. We believe in one God. We believe in equality. We believe that Sikhism teaches us tolerance, to accept others. And it is not the only path to reach divine love. It is one of the paths. And with that philosophy, we welcome everyone to the temple, and we like to know about others, but that's the core value of it.
Sounds lovely. Thank you for sharing all of that. Jan, can you tell us some about your religion?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Shoshana. The Baha'i faith, the founder of the faith was Baha'u'llah, meaning the glory of God. And Baha'u'llah lived only 200 years ago. We celebrated the bicentenary last year. So it's the bicentenary of the faith, really. So it's a relatively new religion. And Baha'u'llah lived in Iran, what is now Iran, and he was born in the early 1800s, and he was born into nobility, and his whole family was known for their service to the poor. And at one point in his life, he did receive a revelation from God, and during that time, he had been imprisoned in and the reason he was imprisoned was because he was a follower of the forerunner of, the faith, who we call the Bab, which means the gate to the Baha'i faith. And the powers that be did not like the teachings. They did not accept the teachings of the faith, and put him in a pretty filthy, dirty dungeon. And there he received, the revelation that he was the messenger for this day. And after that, because he was from a noble family, he was not he was not killed, but he was exiled for the rest of his life. So from a young man on, he and his family were exiled. I'm sorry about that. And they were exiled first to Baghdad, and then to Constantinople, and then Adrianople, and they ended up in Israel, in Akka, what is now Israel. And so that's where he spent most of his life, but still imprisoned. He was let out of prison at the end of his life. But what he taught was essentially the three, I'll call it the three onenesses. And the first one was the oneness of God. We have different religions, different languages, but God is one for all religions. And it's one ever expanding, ever progressing world with the guidance of God. The oneness of religion. We have progressive revelation, which means that over the years, God continues to update his message for humanity. So, and the last oneness is the oneness of humanity. And really the idea that the whole, everybody on earth is one family. I think I heard Vaneet kind of saying the same thing. And the fact of any kind of racial superiority is a myth. So we work very hard within our own community to work for that conduct that would be seemly for someone who is practicing seeing everything through the lens of racial justice. So those three onenesses are really central to the faith: the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of humanity. And that's what Baha'u'llah taught way back in the early 1800s. But some of the other teachings are elimination of the extremes of wealth and poverty, independent investigation of faith. So I don't need clergy to explain or interpret any of the Baha'i writings for me. I can investigate truth for myself. And equality of women and men, which in the time of Baha'u'llah was difficult. One of the actual disciples of Baha'u'llah was a woman, and she had to teach the faith from behind a curtain, if there were men present. So, and she once attended a huge conference of followers of Baha'u'llah, and at the conference she took off her veil, and that was a radical act, an extremely radical act during that time. And actually many of the people there, they were followers of Baha'u'llah too, and they knew what Baha'u'llah had said, but they were very, very shocked at that. So equality of women and men, and I'm just going to mention universal language for the last one because it's so cool, because we believe in a universal auxiliary language. And so auxiliary would be like a second language that everybody would have, or a third language, or fourth or fifth. But anyway, an extra language that would be unified throughout the world. So those are, in a kind of a nutshell, the teachings of the Baha'i faith.
That's great. Thank you. It's so interesting learning about all these other faiths. It sounds like, Jason, there's a lot of similarities between all three of the religions. I know specifically about equality. I remember, Vaneet, we had talked before about how equality is one of the big principles for y'all also. But Jason, are there other similarities that you see in common? And then share a little bit also just about Judaism in general, if you would.
Yeah, I think that goes together really nicely, and I think Vaneet and Jan spoke so beautifully about their faiths. And for me, Avraham, the first Jew, was not really the first monotheist. Even the Torah talks about other monotheists that were around, Melchizedek and different mayors or kings of Jerusalem at the time. But Avraham really connected legislation and ethics and morality to the one God, not just coming close to God spiritually, but how do you live your life, and how do you set up a government, and how do you organize your family? And all these codes of conduct was really the unique revelation of Abraham and the Jewish people to the world. So what I love about Baha'i and Sikhism is it really is, I think, in accordance with Judaism, that so many different religious paths will flourish around the world that talk about the oneness of God and the equality of people, that everyone's created in the image of God. And they don't need to have a connection to Judaism or have some type of relationship that way that we would, the Jewish people would sign off on it or something, or vice versa. And that's how I always felt when I came into a Sikh temple and in a Baha'i center was, oh, you're Jewish, it's very nice. Would you like to sit with us and share some of your prayers or listen to the Shabad, the Sikh holy music? And I really felt for the first time in my life as an adult, in contrast to some other experiences, that I was welcomed as a brother immediately, and there was no barrier. So that I've always stayed so close to these faiths, and there are lots of wonderful other faiths out there. Not to take away, I feel very connected to Sikhism and Baha'i, and so in Sikhism, one element that has really always stuck with me is the meditation on God's name, as Vaneet says, and that's called Nam Jap, the repetition of God's name. And I learned that from Sikh teachers in Richmond and here in Memphis, and then I found it in my Jewish tradition and in certain Kabbalistic schools that are not really talked about. So there's a hidden school of thought in Judaism that I uncovered through studying Sikhism. Also in Baha'i, the oneness of God, I'm very familiar with as a Jewish person, but not the oneness of the human family. I feel that the Jewish people have had a very, very difficult, understatement of the year, history. And not exclusively. Also, other people have had tremendous suffering and pain. But for the Jewish people to really embrace the oneness of humanity, given the recent history only 60 years ago of losing 2/3 of our people, is a very difficult concept to embrace. And through Baha'i, I started looking for that teaching in Judaism, which I did find through a number of rabbis who said that the oneness of humanity is one of our main teachings of the Torah. So I've really enriched my own understanding of Judaism through the being a good student of the faiths of Sikhism and Baha'i.
Beautiful. We should always be learning, right? It's not just about us, because there's little pockets that we can just take away from everything to bring into us that just encourages us even more in our own faith too, right?
Very well said. Yes.
Right. So Jane and Vaneet, I want you guys to touch on that a little bit too, sort of the universal outlook of your faiths. And I know, Vaneet, you had mentioned meditation. Talk also about maybe some service projects that you guys have been able to do through your religions and tie it into this outlook, this universal approach, if you would.
Sure. I'll touch upon that, but I just want to tag along with Jason's comment. I think one thing which I picked was it is just not to align spiritually with the God, but how to do that practice, how to live your life to reach up to that point. So that's another, fundamental concept in Sikhism, that our objective is to realize that divine love. But in order to do that, we have to practice love, So in every thing around me, I try to view it as there's a divine thing to it. And that kind of helps me cultivate that loving spirit, that everything around is created by that divine Lord. And it is something which I need to look with love, and I need to practice love in my day-to-day life, so that eventually I realize that divine love, that's, that the ultimate goal. So, I kind of find that very similar to what Jason mentioned about universal aspects of Sikhism. So I'll again touch upon something unique about Sikhism. So the Holy Scripture is a verse poetry, written in the verse poetry. It's called Guru Granth Sahib. Guru again is enlightener. Granth is the compilation of scripture, and Sahib is a mark of respect. It has about 1430 pages, and it has writings of just not the Sikh prophets, but spiritually enlightened people of that era, Hindu saints and Muslim saints. So in a sense, the book is pluralistic, and Sikhism is pluralistic in nature, that it is again reiterating that Sikhism is not the only way to realize that divine love. It is one of the ways. And that itself is universal to me, and again, when we look upon everyone as equal, as created by the God, I think the universal doctrine itself is that when you consider everyone your own, is what our religions kind of are based at. So I think by default, or by universality is something which have been given in our religions, and I hear the same thing in Bahai and Judaism. So that's important. And with that concept, we treat everyone equal. We don't differentiate that if somebody needs help, if that person is a Sikh or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jewish or Bahai, it's like, it's my religious duty to come forward and help that person, irrespective of who they are, what their backgrounds are, what their social status are. And with that idea, we Sikhs have been, they are known for coming out and helping others, across the globe. You'll find a lot of activities from Sikh religion where they have come up and they have really stood out. And this pandemic has been a classic example of that. Recently, a CNN published an article, and I got this opportunity to interview with them. So they covered what Sikhs have done across US in this pandemic. Similarly, New York Times has published. So there have been a lot of activities. In Memphis, what we did, we provided food to healthcare workers, frontline workers. We reached out to different hospitals during nights, because we felt that that's a time when they don't have access to food easily with the lockdown and everything. We collaborated with the Metropolitan Interfaith Association, MIFA. We provided meals to them. And then we also collaborated with Salvation Army, where again, the community stood, came up and they contributed towards Salvation Army projects. And then I think in midst of everything, one aspect which is commonly ignored, international students at University of Memphis, because of the lockdown, and they are not able to go out and work. And many of those folks, because I've been in those shoes many years ago. I came to US as an international student, so I know how hard it is. Financially, you cannot depend on your parents back home to get money and sustain yourself. So University of Memphis reached out to Sikh community, and they wondered if we can help them. So we provided food, about 200 meals every Saturday for a month, and about 200 pizzas every Thursday. So, that was a very unique opportunity, and, we were so glad to be part of it. So those were some of the examples we did here in Memphis. But again, we always look for opportunities to come forward and help.
It's amazing. I'm overwhelmed in a good way. It's wonderful. Like, if everybody just focused on love, then everything would be okay, just like y'all's approaches. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Jan, can you share some with us about your religion's universal outlook, and maybe some other service projects that y'all have done?
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about all the things that Vaneet was talking about for the service in the community. And it sounds like you're really just looking for spaces to serve that maybe, and that international students really touched my heart. That because you think about how lonely they must be,
Yes.
and all of that, and just kind of stuck here. So, oh, what a wonderful, and all of those projects you mentioned were so amazing. So you asked about the meditation. Uh, we, the Baha'is pray daily. We are to pray. We have an obligatory prayer, and we have a choice. We can do a short prayer, a medium prayer, or a long prayer. The long prayer is quite long, and it involves a lot of rising, getting to knees, and it's very it's a ritual, but it's a very meaningful one. But just for the sake of everybody having a prayer to say, we've got that short one, and we can do that anywhere between noon and sunset, and it's basically 3 sentences. So we have that flexibility. And we also recite, the name of God, Allahu Abha, God is the most glorious, 95 times. And really, it's pretty quick. Used to have prayer beads, but I don't need them anymore. I just use my fingers. And the other thing is we have, all of that prayer is private, but we also have community events like devotionals that anybody in the whole community, it doesn't matter what religion. In fact, we encourage people to come and share their prayers from different religions to our devotional gathering, and we certainly need more of that right now.
Yeah.
The Baha'is have been involved in service in Memphis for some time. We've been working in some apartment complexes with the kids, and we've been working on building community through the children. So especially the middle school students and then the high school students. But what happens is the middle school students are they become involved in a program that is called the Junior Youth Empowerment Program. And the idea is that they learn virtues, which then they can apply to their own lives and their interactions with other of their age or their families or whatever. And then they also do service. They come up with service projects for their own community, for their own, apartment complex. And we find that works much better than, saying, oh, why don't we go, feed so-and-so today. So, and they come up with some really unique and interesting projects. One of them was they had a fun day for the smaller, the middle school kids had a fun day for the younger kids, and then they just all came and they had ice cream and games, and everybody really enjoyed it. I think it was at the beginning of the school year, so they made little packets for the school year for them too. Right now we're thinking about, we're involved in a couple of community centers, and we're kind of putting together a plan for organizing one of these apartment complexes so the parents can get through this time of virtual learning. I mean, we know that the kids are going to have a device. They've all been promised a device, and that's about all we know at this point. But we think that, just helping the families get organized so that they can maybe even provide some pod, they've been talking about pods, which is kids learning together, groups of 3 or 4 kids rather than coming together in 15 kids or 20 kids at a time. So those are some of the service things that we're involved in the community.
I love it. I love that you're empowering the kids to take ownership and be proactive and think of their own idea so they can really own it all. That's very powerful. I love that. Thank you. Jason, we have just a few more minutes, and I want you to touch on the Universal Language Room a little bit, and then we'll talk about with everybody their experiences with you in ULR.
Okay, great. I mean, we've had some great sessions. As I mentioned earlier, Vaneet and I went on the Amy Sparapolis Memphis Live show, and explained universal language to her, did a demonstration, and she really embraced it. It was a terrific experience. So we've talked about further projects that we can do together with the Sikh and Jewish community. That led to a group of Jewish friends of mine going to the Sikh temple and learning from Vaneet and a couple of his associates.
Yeah.
So the universal language built that rapport and allowed us to continue. As I mentioned earlier, Ayamiha with the Baha'is was just fantastic. It was maybe 30 or 40 people. We brought the boom whackers and percussive instruments. And the best part was that the middle schoolers looked at me like, and I was like, okay, good. That's what I want to hear from you guys. Because if I can turn this boat around, it's a success. And they were playing and they were saying, when are you coming back? And they were so excited and they're beaming and smiling and they were off their phones, which is a big goal for me, to see them detach from the phone and connect with a human eye to eye and soul to soul. So, and I brought my guitar just to show just how easy it is. We were just going by sets of 4 on Tuesday evenings at 6 o'clock. Jan has been a wonderful partner with me to set up a universal language room weekly. And we just start with a set of 4 and then we go through all the permutations. As I learned from studying with Vaneet about Abraham Abulafia, a rabbi who studied the name of God in different positions, in different combinations, and permutations. And we exchange those ideas. Somebody will go, somebody will respond. Back and forth. So it's been really fun. I don't want to take up too much time talking about it and let Jan and Vaneet share their thoughts, but I've just had a tremendous blessing to work with both of them.
Thank you. I could listen to you all day, I just have to say. And I love that you're having a conversation with people, but there's no words. It's just sounds and melodies and whatever musical instrument you have, but somehow you're still able to understand exactly what the person is trying to share with you.
Yes,
it's amazing.
Exactly it.
Jan, can you talk a little bit about your experience with ULR?
Yeah, well, it all started with that party that Jason was talking about, and it was so much fun. I mean, it was a diversity of ages there, of all everybody, all different aspects of the Memphis community were there. But yes, I agree with Jason. It was seeing those middle school kids just really get excited about it. That was really fun. And those boom whackers are really great too. They're a great way to share, and people have fun with them. I can't even describe what they are, but they're an instrument, but a very simple little thing that you can do rhythms. And what we did that night was call and response. Really, it was, we went around the room and one person would play a little something, and then the next person would answer them basically, and then go on and on and on. We went all the way around the room. It was very much fun. So when Jason said he wanted to try it, because that was just before the pandemic, and so Jason said he wanted to try it virtually, and so we have been doing that weekly for many weeks, 3 months I think. And I have learned so much. I've just learned how to call and response with other people, but also with myself, that I can do that on the piano. I grew up playing the piano, but with music and reading music, and this is just a whole different experience. I'm at that age where I need different experiences to kind of keep my brain active. And it's so totally different than what I'm doing the rest of the day during the pandemic, that it's just really great. It's like I feel like I'm in a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the same things too. I've had that because I've done them also with Jason, and it's just something that you can't exactly put into words, but it feels right and good. And it's lovely to share it with so many other people.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to being able to do it in person again too.
Yes.
Really nice.
Hopefully sooner than later. Vinny, can you share a little bit about your experience with ULR?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back to meditation part. I'll touch upon that. So meditation is an integral part of Sikhism. We can meditate on the name of God. We call Vaheguru, and either we can repeat Vaheguru, Vaheguru again, or we can do a collective singing as form of hymns from the holy book. And I think that's what brought Jason to the temple in the first place, and that kind of was a stepping stone for this relationship. So we in Sikhism, music has a great role, a very big and important role. Every congregation has music to it. So this partnership was very natural when Jason came with the interest of music, and it went beyond music to know what is behind music and what other similarities we have. So Universal Language Room has been again for me a beautiful concept to start with, to just, a thought of communicating using that language of music is something I really, really enjoy and like. And then, I think this is a stepping stone for, and this is a perfect example what we are doing today, coming from the Universal Language Room, starting from that. And now we are much beyond that, just kind of learning about Bahai community is something very interesting for me. I never knew that much about the community, and again, through Jason, learning about Judaism and how the concept of meditation has been there in the faith. So incredible experience, and I thank Jason for that.
I'm with you. I give all the thanks to him. And I love that he's brought us all together too.
Yes.
It's been really great.
Certainly.
Okay, so just a couple minutes left, and I'm hoping that each of you, so I know that in our religion, there's a way that we greet people, and there's a way that when we say that we're leaving. So I'm hoping that we can all sort of sign off with, if there's a Sikh sign off and a Bahai sign off, and Jason, you can share ours from Judaism. If we could all just, I want to thank y'all again for being here, and then leave us with some like loving, peaceful words as we put an end to this one, if you will.
Sure, I can start with that. So I have two greetings. The first one is a greeting when I meet someone. It can be greeting when I depart. And it's more cultural, but has some religious significance. It's called Sat Sri Akal, 3 words, Sat Sri Akal. Akal is the name for the God, and Sat is truth. So the name of God is truth. The second one is more religious. Typically, it's a greeting we use at the temple. It's called Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Vaheguru is the name of God, as I said. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Khalsa is a community of pure, and we believe Sikhism and as a community of pure, with those values. So the community belongs to Vaheguru, God, and Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh means the glory is to the God. So that's the common greeting we use at the temple.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Jan, can you share with us if if your religion has a greeting or a sign off or just a way to leave people in peace?
Absolutely. And goodbye, everyone. It's been so wonderful. And I will just say, Allahu Akbar.
What does that mean?
God is the most glorious.
Love it. Beautiful. Thank you. Jason, round us out, would you?
I love the street version. Greeting Jews who say "Was machst du Yid" is Yiddish for "How is a Jew? How are you doing?" I really love that. It's just got something in my gut that I love hearing that when someone says that. And then traditionally and spiritually and, for thousands of years, people said Shalom Aleichem, and the response is Aleichem Shalom. So it means peace and peace upon you, Aleichem. And then someone respond, well, Aleichem, upon you, Shalom, peace. And so that's that mirror version that we're wishing blessings upon everybody. And I want to thank you, Shoshana, for such an amazing ability to facilitate this and lead us and get all of us speaking. And to my friends, Jan, Peterson, and Vaneet Singh, it's just been a wonderful blessing to continue to work with you and then to let people know about your wonderful faiths.
Yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you all so much. I appreciate y'all being here and sharing with us all these beautiful words.
Thank you so much, Shoshana. I really appreciate you facilitating this.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.